Welcome to Future Ready Live, where we talk about topics that will help CPAs, CGMAs, and their organizations prepare for change and transformation. I'm your host, Tom Hood, the EVP of Business Engagement and Growth at the AICPA and SEMA, the largest global body of professional certified accountants in the world. We're going to be talking about what today's young professionals want out of a career in finance and accounting. Joining me is Al D., speaker, consultant, author, and podcast host, The Future of Work, Leadership, Attracting and Retaining Talent, and Learning. He's the owner of his own consulting firm, Betterwork Labs, the author of the MBA Insider, How to Make the Most of Your MBA. I have my signed copy here, and a member of the LinkedIn Creator Accelerator Program for Technology and Innovation, host of the Edge of Work podcast, and it just amazing. I've known him for 19 years and honored to have him on our show. He will also be at our Future Finance Summit later on this year. So with that, Al, say hi to everybody.
Hey everyone, and Tom, it's great to be here. Like you said, knowing each other for a long time. I'm excited to talk to you today. It's great to be part of this.
You're quite accomplished for a young man here. So it's great to have you here. And let's talk about things that are very relevant to our audience. Finding and retaining talent is the number one issue facing finance accounting leaders for the last year and a half. Whenever we poll them, it's number one, and the bar goes all the way off the charts.
Yeah.
So just quickly, some thoughts about that.
Yeah, Tom. Well, I think it underscores something that I know that you know incredibly well, and that business is inherently human. And even in this world of incredible technology and innovation, which we know will continue to come our way, people really matter, and people are really part of business. And I think back to almost a year ago now at the last Future Finance Summit that I had a privilege of being a part of and attending, where many of the folks in attendance, the finance leaders, were very attuned to understanding just some of the constraints and challenges that they were facing, either in terms of getting enough people into their organization or being able to keep the ones that they had. But I think the shift that at least that I'm seeing in the market, particularly looking at this from a leadership level, is just this understanding of both the short and the long game, right? The short game is certainly the things that are happening on the day-to-day and on a quarterly basis in terms of the challenges with retaining talent. But then the long game is just, as you well know, from an industry perspective, some of the short-term things are not going away, right? And so the question then becomes, from a strategic layer, how do you manage both the short and long game, around this? And I think that is where I see the most opportunity, particularly for finance leaders, and really thinking about, not just about the short term, but the long term, and then managing how do you prioritize against both. And I do think that in particular, finance leaders, especially, which have plenty of capacity for short and long range planning, have really an opportunity to help their peers really think about this.
And that's why we're hoping to keep you involved in this thing to help us do that. So the other piece is, like you said, our world of work has changed and is continuing to change as we speak, pretty fast, actually, on many dimensions and levels. So help set the context for us right now about the workplace. What are you noticing about what's going on in the workplace? And what specifically are key observations that our audience members, executives, as well as young and emerging leaders should know and think about?
The two words, Tom, that come to mind for me, number one is intentionality. And I think about that in the context of, regardless of where you work each day, it's really important to be intentional about setting up that environment so that if you're an individual, you can do your best work. And if you're a manager or a leader, so your people can do your best work. And a really tactical example of that is that if you know that you're going to only be in the office 2 days a week because that's what your company's policy is, how do you design your workflow in a way that enables you to take advantage of that time, being in the office 2 days a week? And as a leader or of an organization, how do you kind of create those conditions so that you are intentionally designing so that your people who are there are set up for success and being able to actually get the work done each and every day? I think for a long time, we just kind of took work for granted in terms of, we know what we're doing, we know how things are working. But in this kind of evolving workplace, I think the word intentionality comes to mind. I think the other word that comes to mind is continuous, in terms of this continuous mindset of continuing to evaluate how things are evolving and changing, as you pointed out. And it's not as if we ever reach this end state where things are just, they're there and they're good. It's just this continuous mindset of being able to sense what is happening and then being able to respond to it in some kind of way, shape, or form. And I think that cuts across everything that I think many of your leaders are probably thinking about, just in terms of the return to work policy, how you are designing programs around retention, how you're thinking about training and learning. It's just, now we're in this mindset of just continuously just sensing what's happening and then evolving to the pace of the changes that are being made, and having that continuous kind of thought process and approach to it.
It's funny because early on, even in the pandemic, I'd seen some stuff from McKinsey about this arc of 5 things to be thinking about, and as they called it, the next normal. Which I think what I loved about that is the next normal makes you think, because after 2008 is when the term new normal was coined. We're not going back to normal. We're going to this new normal, right? That was going to happen after the big recession hit. But this time they used the term next normal. And to me, that is exactly what you're saying about this idea of a continuous mindset. We're gonna figure things out, do them, and then we're going to start seeing what works and what doesn't, and then shift and make some more adjustments. And I think that's what we're all, and it's uncomfortable because the world of work used to be the big stable thing. You got it. Right. Didn't change for 100 years, basically. Right. Other than maybe the technology came in. So anyhow, I love that.
Yeah. Tom, I know you're a lover of a good metaphor. And one I heard the other day was there's a reason why the windshield is much bigger than the rear view mirror, right? And it's to acknowledge that you do need to reflect and look back, but there's a reason why you also need to think about what's coming ahead, right? And keeping that in balance, I think, is really critical for leaders. Yeah.
Well, and one more point about that is, in a world of acceleration, which I think all know, and I think that's what's causing all of this, you actually have to look farther ahead, right? Yes. Ever been behind a tractor trailer on the highway?
Yes.
You can't see far ahead. You could be ended up on in the cargo bay.
Sure.
So, all right, good stuff. All right, now this is over the last couple of weeks, we've been out on the road, lots of major conferences, North American Financial Executive Summit, and we've spoken with numerous CFOs and other finance leaders. Of course, talent continues to be the top priorities, but they're also starting to ask about, how can they play a role in helping to solve that for their own organization?
Yeah, well, I think, and one of the observations I noted from attending the Future of Finance event last year was there were a number of leaders in the audience who really were thinking about, hey, look, I know my lane is finance and really looking for the finance organization, but how can I be a partner to my chief human resources officer, or in some cases, my chief talent officer, my chief people officer, et cetera, right? And I think there's a couple things to keep in mind. One is that idea around the short and long term, and being able to kind of navigate the trade-offs amongst resources, right, and allocating resources against some of those priorities that a chief talent officer, a chief people officer might have in the organization. Because there are these short, acute things that we know we need to do in terms of making sure that we're hitting the right headcount for this next quarter, but also over the longer term, because we know that these things are not going away. And so I really do think finance leaders in particular do have an opportunity to really help with that, because they're accustomed and really thinking about managing those, particularly because so I know many of your folks in the audience are have quarterly earnings and have to think about that, but also have to think about the bigger picture. I think the other thing to really helping them think about is the idea around value and ROI and business value, right? And I think when I talk a lot with learning and development professionals and chief talent officers, they're very attuned in thinking about how do we make sure that the things that we're doing are in fact valuable and value add, and that there is ROI out of the investments we're making, and whether it's in acquiring talent and programs to do that, whether that's through leadership development and learning and development programs, and making sure that they're being consumed and used and that people are getting value out of them. And that is the bread and butter of any finance leader, right? In terms of being able to help really think strategically about, how you get value out of that. And so I think really, Tom, what it comes back to is, what are the strengths and the things that as a finance leader that are your bread and butter, and how can you bring them to partner with all the other people in the organization, and specifically those chief human resources and people officers, and bring that to bear so that you can collaborate with them to help solve some of these challenges.
Yeah, that whole idea of a value-based business partner is a
Yes.
major theme that came out of last year's Future of Finance work. So absolutely. Now, so you've been studying workplace trends, and I love it because you're from what are you, a millennial? No.
I'm a self-proclaimed millennial.
Oh my gosh, we've now reversed the trend. Now the
I know.
millennials are teaching the boomers how to
I
deal with
know.
stuff. I love it.
Dude.
But you've been a student of workplace trends and spent a bunch of time across for-profit, not-profit, and higher ed. What's true about the workplace today that
Yeah.
wasn't true 5 or 10 years ago?
It's a great question. So I think a couple things I mean, there are a couple, I guess, top of mind issues that are probably on, leaders like CFOs or other leaders' agenda that are probably weren't as much of on the agenda 10 years ago. I mean, the obvious ones, which I think you know well, are ESG. And that certainly is something that I think was talked about 10 years ago, but not on the agenda like it is today.
Yeah.
Certainly the discussion as well as the work around well-being and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Both of those are top of mind. I think though, I think those are trends and I think most people know about those. But I think to me, the things that stand out are this idea around alignment. And what I mean by that is that if you were a company 10 years ago, I think you could go out and say, oh, we really believe in attracting a diverse workplace. And that was enough. Today, there's got to be an alignment with that. Like there needs to be alignment between the actions or between what you say and what you do. And that is definitely something at least I have been observing, and I certainly appreciate about the next generation of talent. They're much more attuned because there is more information available out there. And so I think the challenges sometimes come when they're looking at a company who says one thing and perhaps maybe acts in another way. And so I think there needs to be much more focus on the alignment of being able to stand for what you say you stand for and matching that up. And so I think that's something that is definitely changed. And then certainly also just the ways of working which are available today, which perhaps were not necessarily as popular 5 to 10 years ago. And it's not just remote work or flexible work, but it's alternative types of work in terms of gig and independent workers, in terms of entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. I mean, I think of all the different types of accounting and finance professionals that could, they could work for a great organization or they could go off on their own in this idea around entrepreneurship. And so, and just looking at some of the trends around the number of businesses that have been opened, solo businesses that have been opened over the past 1 to 2 years as a result of the pandemic, I think is another good data point around that. And so I think those are some of the things that come top of mind for me.
Some great observations. I mean, and it's one of these things, I guess, if you don't really deeply think about it, you just take it for granted. So these are a bit eye-opening. All right, let's talk about young emerging professionals, because I know that's what our CFOs are all thinking about. They're critical to our accounting and finance profession. So what do our leaders, senior leaders, need to focus on in order to find ways of attracting and retaining this emerging talent?
I think that, I mean, nobody goes to work each day and wants to do a bad job, right? Like we all want to go to work and, we want to be good at what we do, but we also know that I think in today's workplace, because of how fast things are changing, we want to have a little bit of confidence that we're going to be able to change and evolve as the market evolves. And so being able to work for a company, I think that is intentional and aware of how they're going to be able to provide those pathways to their individuals, and not just, here's what you become after staff and here's what you become after senior, but here are the types of things we're going to do to help you either progress up or progress in new ways or to keep you relevant. I think that's really critical and really important. And that also, I think, ties to just the kind of attention that's being paid to even higher education in general, right? In terms of how do I make sure that the path I'm pursuing actually has a pathway for me over the course of the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. Because I think a lot of younger folks have observed astutely some of the challenges that have happened in the world over the past 5 to 10 years. And they want to make sure they're doing their homework to make sure, hey, I'm going to be okay. So I think that's one thing. I think a thing I talked about earlier in terms of the alignment between what you say and then what you offer. I think that is another thing that is super critical and super important. And then the last thing, which I wouldn't say is new, but I think has been paid more attention to because of the global pandemic, as well as just the new world of work we're in, is this idea around apprenticeship, mentorship, in learning, right? And particularly within this profession, Tom, like I think you know better than anyone else, so much of how you grow as a professional are through those opportunities to learn that skill or to learn how to do that particular part of the work stream or the deliverable so that you can take those on and you can feel confident. And I think we've definitely all been challenged in terms of thinking about how we do that in this new world of work. And so I think the companies that are doing really well right now in terms of being able to attract talent are the ones who are thinking through how do we do this in a way that really gives our employees, particularly the ones who are new to the workforce, both the confidence as well as the excitement that we're going to teach you some things that are going to be able to help you not only deliver value, but have a home here and continue to learn and grow with us. And so I think that's something that's really, really important too.
So you are hitting on things that we see constantly in our larger corporates. That there's a one big idea is that we have to upskill and reskill as a result of all the accelerated digital transformation that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years. And then the other thing that we did in response to all of this is not quite a year ago, we created the first registered apprenticeship for finance and accounting in the United States with the U.S. Department of Labor. So using our world-class global credential, the CGMA Finance Leadership Program, that's the required technical education that goes in the apprenticeship. And then you come out with a CGMA certificate and a certificate from the Department of Labor as a certified finance business partner. Now, interesting enough, that comes on after you come out of school.
Yeah.
And it's about a 2-year journey to get you the right on-the-job, higher-level skills plus mentoring, earning while you're learning, to then take you to another level in terms of job readiness.
And Tom, what I love about that is, and what leaders should take away from that is that you don't have to do this alone.
Right.
And in many cases, I would argue that it's better that you don't. You can't be expected to know everything. You need to bring in the right partners. You need to work collaboratively. Because again, as we've hit on before, the pace of change moves so quickly that it's hard to stay on top of things. And so to the degree you can think expansively about the types of partners you bring in to deliver this, I think is really critical. And that's one of the things I loved about that program that you built.
That's what we're really excited. We've already signed on our first 3 employers. So we're looking forward to continue to build this out, because it does make a difference. And everyone says people coming right out of college aren't job ready. And this has taken an 100-year-old concept that was in the trades, applying it to professionals, right? So you're seeing IT apprentices, you're seeing human resource apprentices, and now we have finance and accounting apprentices.
Absolutely.
All right, so now let's talk about this. We call this show Future Ready Live. What does it mean for you to be future ready for organizations and accounting professionals?
I think for organizations, I think it is this idea of this continuous mindset and this continuous ability to sense and respond, and to acknowledge that while not everything will always change, change will always be present around us, and to embrace that and lean into it. And I think so, to me at least, future ready means accepting and embracing a continuous learning mindset, as well as being able to have the foresight to be able to think ahead, as well as the ability to kind of learn from all the different iterations that you go through. And so it's kind of this duality of holding space, both for looking ahead, as well as making sure that you're learning from the things that are happening in real time or that you've gone through. And so that, for organizations at least, is what it means. And I think for professionals out there, it is in many ways, it's a similar mindset, right? In terms of, just as your organization is trying to change faster than the rate of, or learn faster than the rate of change, you as a professional can do that as well. And to embrace that as an opportunity to take your career within the profession in different directions, to build new skills, to spot opportunities that you can take advantage of. And so it's just this acknowledgement that we are living and operating in where change will be present, even if we can't always predict exactly when it's going to happen, and just to embrace it and lean into that.
Yeah. And that's, like you said, that's true for us as individuals and as organizations. So we've got to start to adopt that continuous learning, and it can't always be dependent on the employer.
Sure.
We got to take responsibilities for our own careers, as you have, quite frankly. You've written a book by now and all other things. It's pretty cool.
And I would add to you, Tom. I think the other reason why, quite frankly, is that look, like for the majority of us, we will not spend the entirety of our career at the current employer we are at, and so your learning will go far past that. And so while I do believe companies absolutely play a role in fostering that, as every individual, your learning can go far beyond the current role that you're in. And so that is just another reason, even more reason why to really underscore the importance of taking ownership of your career and architecting it in a way that is going to be really energizing and exciting for you.
Awesome. So I want to close with this one because I'm happy to share you're joining us at our Future Finance Summit again this year in December in Austin. And can you give us a kind of preview of what you're going to be talking about and a pitch for why finance leaders should join us?
Yeah, Tom, I'm grateful to have the chance to be down in Austin with you all, and hope to see some folks there. Talent is, as you mentioned, a priority for many finance leaders, and we're going to spend some time talking about it, and specifically around how do we attract this next generation of talent and continue to make the profession that we have one that people see themselves in and want to grow a career in. And one of the ways in which we're going to do that is we're going to hear from some folks on the front lines, specifically from some of our up and coming stars in the finance and accounting profession, people who are trailblazing their paths. We're going to hear from them about what they're seeing, what they see as opportunities, some of the challenges that they face, and their pitch to all the leaders out there who are finance leaders who care about bringing in this talent, about the things that they can do to attract and retain, in particular, young talent. And so if you're a finance leader who is thinking about this or wants to be around other peers who are thinking about this, I'm going to make a pitch to hopefully have you be there, because I think you'll learn a lot, and we certainly can learn a lot from you. The problems that we have faced in this are not going to be solved by us in silos. They're going to be solved by when we work together. And so we would certainly love to have you there if you're someone who cares about this as a finance leader.
And it's exciting to have a panel of multi-gen young professionals. We're trying to go like right from out of school to the first few years to get a cross section, but and you're going to lead that discussion, which obviously you've given us a really good preview here. So we're excited about that, Al, and it'll be great to have you join us once again. Yeah. So with that, I'd say thanks a bunch. Lots of takeaways for me out of this. I love the continuous mindset. I really like that. I'm going to be using that one for sure. It's sticky. You can connect to Al on LinkedIn. It's Al DEA, or follow him on Twitter at Alex_DEA. And website is www.betterworklabs.com. And with that, thank you so much for this conversation, Al. It's been great.
Thank you, Tom.
And for all of you out there, thanks for joining us. And don't miss our other Future Ready live sessions back here on LinkedIn the first and third Tuesday of each month at noon Eastern. See you then.